G'day everyone and welcome back to another live stream here at the Australian Reptile Park. What a place to be on a Monday. Now, we hope you've been enjoying all these live streams, keeping you guys busy. It's keeping us busy as well, and I hope you enjoy watching at home. Now, today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the snakes that call Australia home. Only a couple. I'll also give a quick demonstration of how we milk a snake, which is really important to the reptile park and something we've been doing for a very, very long time. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying these videos. Plenty more videos throughout the week. Make sure you tune in on a Thursday. I will be, because Liz will be talking about all of our frog species. That's my big boss. She'll be out here telling you all about our amazing frogs, but heaps of other videos to watch as well. So first snake we're going to see is one of my old favourites. His name's Barry. He's one of the most beautiful snakes that calls the reptile park home. So what I'm going to get the amazing camera lady Caitlin to do is take a few steps back, head over to the substrate or the mulch over there, and I'm going to go Barry out and we're going to make him disappear for a few seconds. Alright, so this is Barry, and he is a beautiful top end, oh, there's a little leaf in the way, top end death adder. Now, if you're familiar with the name death adder, well, you probably are because you're from Australia, and there's a lot of death adder species that call Australia home. So if you're from this part of New South Wales, I'm on the central coast, about an hour and a bit north of Sydney, the death adder species that I would find in that area would be the common death adder. Now, the common death adder does come in a few different colours, but the colour forms that we'd typically see in this part of the world, they'd be red, sometimes like a bricky brown, but also too, they can be a nice grey colour as well. Now, this particular death adder is what we call a top end adder, and it's a Dejara locale, so it's probably one of the most spectacular looking snakes to call Australia home. They are a beautiful, beautiful snake. Now, I asked Caitlin to take a few steps back and go onto the mulch because I just wanted to show you something. I'll do it now. I just want to show you how incredibly well this snake will blend in with its environment. It can literally disappear under some leaf litter. I'll just throw a little bit more on there, that now. Incredible camouflage. Now, the leaf litter that I'm putting on top of this snake obviously doesn't suit it very well, but if that was a nice reddish death adder like you'd find in this part of New South Wales, it would disappear quite quickly. Now, the reason I like to point that out to you guys is when you approach a lot of different snake species in Australia, they're going to know you're coming and they're most likely going to move away from you. This is one of those snake species that's going to more likely rely on its camouflage and its ability to hide from you. So why does that make it a little bit different? Well, it means if you're walking through the bush, this isn't a snake that's likely going to move from the path that you're walking. So it's a good reminder that if you are walking out in the bush, you should be wearing nice sturdy boots like I'm wearing right now. Nice sturdy boots, and that way, if you happen to stumble on a snake like a death adder, it's going to struggle to bite through those pair of shoes. So just a nice little easy safety tip. Now, they are an ambush animal, and what I mean by an ambush animal is they don't move around foraging as much trying to find food like a brown snake. You can imagine a brown snake going through maybe a shed looking for a rodent to eat or something like that, whereas a death adder is going to rely on its speed, its stealth, but also too, this little adaptation that they have. You see that? Oh, I'll put my finger there. Look at that tail. It's feathered. Almost looks like feathered. Looks like it's feathered. So it looks like a lure, right? And what this snake will use a method called caudal luring. So the snake will sit in folded up basically. That tail will sit up nice and erect, start to wiggle around a little bit. And you could imagine a small reptile or maybe a bird or even potentially a small mammal would find that worm-like little bit of wiggling of that tail very, very attractive. As they get close enough, that's when the death adder will strike. Now, the death adder has one of the fastest strikes of any snake on the planet. So you could imagine the little bird comes down, gets right near that tail, snake strikes out, obviously envenomates that animal and then begins to eat it. So this is an animal that doesn't move very far to find its food. Now, when I say they don't move quite far, depending on the time of the year, you can find these snakes quite active, particularly small males on really hot, humid nights. They will travel fair distances, and that's typically how we will encounter death adders in the wild. But typically what they like to do is rely on their camouflage, and they bring that food to them. I just like to highlight the camouflage thing because it is quite cool to know that there is differences in snake behaviour in terms of the way they predate, or in this case ambush, potential prey items. Now, this particular Death Adder is probably one of the calmest snakes that we have here at the reptile park. Now, I'm going to give you a nice close look at his beautiful head. And the name Death Adder, it does make them kind of sound quite threatening. But in saying that, they're certainly not an aggressive snake by any means. Now, of course, if you happen to step right on top of one, they're going to be a little bit frightened, want to defend themselves. And how snakes typically will defend themselves if they can't escape or move away, they might strike, and which means they could potentially envenomate a person. So when I said before, wearing boots or long, loose-fitted pants when you're walking through the bush could literally save your life. So make sure you do it. It's a really, really easy tip. Don't go bushwalking in thongs or barefoot because you don't really know what snakes could be around, and you should familiarise with the snakes that live endemic to your region anyway. He is a beautiful snake. You can see how relaxed he is, but I just like to bring Barry down because obviously he's got one of the best names ever, Barry or Baz for short, but also too because he is such a relaxed specimen and one of my favourite snakes that calls the reptile park home. Now I'm going to go put Barry back. He's done his job for the day. I'm going to go grab out our next snake. So just hold there for a second. I shan't be long.
What have you got coming up next, Dan?
What's next? Coming up next is a tiger snake. Woohoo! How good's that? This particular tiger snake's named Benji. So this is Benji the tiger snake. We'll get down nice and close so you can have a look, get the camera nice and close there, guys. So this is Benji the tiger snake. He's named after, you know, the great, well, he doesn't play for the Tigers anymore, but Benji Marshall, of course, the great footballer. But this is definitely one of my favourite tiger snakes that calls the park home. Now, when people expect to see a tiger snake, you can really picture that kind of distinct triangulated head we can see there. But also, too, you can see the bands that line the snake's body. And I'm just going to highlight that for a second, because I could bring down another, say, I don't know, 10 or 15 tiger snakes that live here at the park, bring them down, and they would look quite different to this particular individual. And most of the tiger snakes that we have at the reptile park all come from the same location or the same locality. But in saying that, they can be quite variable in colour. So it's a good reminder for you guys playing at home that if you ever do see a snake, you should never try and identify it by its coloration or anything like that, because not only can snakes be highly variable from species to species, but even within their own species. So a great example might be your eastern brown snake. Eastern brown snake, as the name suggests, typically are brown, but you'll find them in other colours as well, sometimes even really dark, almost like a black coloration. Some are banded, some are unbanded. It's a good reminder if you ever see a snake in Australia that you should always assume that it could be potentially venomous. Don't go near it, don't try and pick it up, and certainly, obviously, don't try and catch or kill it. Because that is the main cause of snake bites here in Australia, people trying to catch or kill the snake that bites them. So really, don't do those two things. You're not going to be bitten by a snake. Now here in Australia we have over 170 terrestrial snake species. Now a small percentage of those are considered dangerous to people, but you're only talking about 10%. But your chances of being killed by a snake in Australia is extremely small. On average each year you're talking about 2 to 3 deaths from snake bite. That's a very small number, despite the fact that we do have so many highly venomous snake species. Now the reason we don't have very many snake bite deaths is, one, we should all know how to treat a snake bite, and we're going to talk about that very, very soon. Also, two, we have access to wonderful hospitals right around the country, but on top of that too, we have access to free and very efficient and effective antivenom. So let's have a look how we make antivenom here in Australia. All right, let me just grab my vial. Oh no, I'll grab it in a second. So I'm going to place the snake down on this soft pad here. It's like a pillow. I'll restrain the snake behind the back of the head. That's one thing you don't want to be bitten on a live stream. Can't really edit that out. All right, we're going to grab the vial and milk the snake. There we go. Snake bites down on the vial. And hopefully you can see, I know sometimes the lighting down here can be a bit off. I'm getting my breath back a little bit. It's just because I walked down here, I'm buggered. But you can see the venom dripping down the vial. Now it doesn't look like much, but there's certainly enough venom inside that vial to definitely kill me. Thankfully though, it's inside the vial. Now this venom won't go to waste. It'll be sent down to Securus in Victoria and turned into the life-saving antivenom that's distributed to hospitals right around Australia. Now the reptile park's been milking snakes since the early 1950s, the team here. Literally keepers risking their lives most days to save complete strangers. It's one of the most important programs that we're a part of here in Australia, and you get to see it firsthand how we operate with our snakes. Now typically if we were up the top milking this snake, I wouldn't hold the snake onto the vial anywhere near as long. It would have been off the vial and back inside of its exhibit quite quickly. But I held it on there a little bit longer today so you guys can have a look. And now I want to point out another thing. Can you see that fang? I don't know if you can. I can't see the camera. But if you can see the fang, will notice how small it is. I keep harping on about those covered shoes and long loose fitted pants. It would be very, very difficult for a tiger snake to bite through the boots that I'm wearing. So again, why I highlight wearing protective clothing when you're walking out in the backyard or maybe walking through the bush. We might let the snake go down onto the ground over here and have a shot of how a snake moves. All right. There we go. Now I'm going to talk really loud because I'm going to tell you what to do if you come across a snake, okay? Let's just say you're out bushwalking. You've seen a snake out in the path, moving the way exactly how it is now. It's crossing over the path. You've seen the snake. What I want you to do is stay still for a second and then walk away. Walk in the opposite direction. Snake is not going to chase you, and I'll tell you why. This snake will not look at you as food. It sees you as a big, scary predator. So it will want to move away from you, just like that snake did with me. If you happen to stumble right onto a snake, you need to stay still. I'll tell you why. The snake's going to react to fast movement. Stay still for a few seconds, snake will move off. That will allow you to move away quite quickly. Remember, the majority of people that are bitten by these animals are trying to catch or kill them. Now, if you have a snake in your backyard, don't panic. Just go inside, lock your doors. Tiger snakes, no arms, no hands, can't open locked doors. If the snake's outside and you're inside, you can come in a little bit closer, guys. If the snake's outside and you're inside, you're perfectly safe. There's nothing to worry about. And what you can do then is call the local snake catcher. I feel like these days there's more snake catchers in the country than there is normal people. But you can call a snake catcher, they'll come out, they'll remove the snake for you, and that way, snake goes back into the bush, away from harm, and you don't have to worry about it, okay? They're not manhunters. They don't look at you as a food source. They just want to stay away from you. They just want to go about their business. Tiger snakes like eating frogs that big. That's it. They don't want to take on big giant humans like us. Now I mentioned before, snake bite treatment. Hold there, don't move. If you've watched a few of our other videos, I think we might have covered this, but for those that haven't watched, it's just a good reminder. You should all know the first aid treatment for our front fang venomous snakes in Australia. If you're bitten by a snake in Australia, you want to immobilise the limb that's been bitten. Most people are bitten on the hand, wrist, ankle, foot. So you'll immobilise that limb, put the bandage on. When you're applying the bite, let's just say I was bitten right here on the wrist. I'd wrap the bite site 1, 2, 3 times. I'd go down to the end of the limb, make my way back up again, put the arm in a sling, stop your muscle movement as much as possible, and get to hospital and receive antivenom. On average, every year in Australia, approximately 100 people are treated for serious snake bite, and as I said, only a very, 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 very small percentage of people are ever killed by snakes in Australia. Manage the bite correctly, you're going to survive. But really it comes back to just making sure we don't interact with these animals, leave them alone, and they'll be very glad that you decided to do so. So we have some incredible snake species in Australia, there's no doubt about it. We have lots of venomous snakes, but we also have a lot of snakes that what we consider harmless animals. So they are misunderstood. A lot of people don't like snakes, and I just think it's from lack of education and not understanding them too much. When you learn about them and start to appreciate the important role that they do play, then you soon kind of realise they really aren't that bad. They're actually very important to the environment for many, many different reasons, and all we have to do is respect their being here for a long time and let them have their space. We're going to jump into some question time.
Yeah, sure, Dan. Can you talk about why they're so important for the environment?
Yeah, so obviously they can control even feral pest species, so rodent populations and stuff like that. You could imagine recently we had a spike in rodents going through Western New South Wales, etc. one thing that's going to eat a lot of those rodents would be brown snakes and the like. No brown snakes, you're going to see more rodents. So they do play a role in, I guess, disease control or rodent control. But also, too, because they fit in a certain part of that chain of as a predatory species, they control other numbers, too. So if you think about, like, a tiger snake, it's going to feed on a lot of frogs, and all that kind of balance sits in together. So they are very important to the ecosystem, and that's why we have so many different snake species that cover the country.
If you got bitten by a snake and you're not sure what kind of species it was, what should you do? Same
treatment. You should, any snake bite you should treat seriously, particularly if you don't know what snake has bitten you. Now, there's a very, very good chance if you're bitten by a snake, it's not going to be a venomous snake, but also too, there's a chance you might not be envenomated. But you still have to treat the bite seriously. So bandage on, go to hospital, monitoring symptoms. By misidentifying a snake that bites you, it could be fatal. So you might think you've been bitten by a snake that's harmless when in fact it was a highly venomous snake. You have to treat it seriously, all snake bites here in Australia. Now, most people that are watching today are never ever going to have to worry about that. But in saying that, you all know how to deal with it now. So if it does happen, stay calm, stay relaxed. You know what to do.
What do we do with the venom once we've got it?
So we freeze it. We sent a whole big consignment down to Seqirus, which was formerly the Commonwealth Serum Laboratories, and they turn the raw product that we work with. So our part in the procedure is extracting the raw venom from these snakes. That raw venom is sent away and turned into the anti-venom, or I just like to say medicine for snake bite. So the raw venom is turned into anti-venom, distributed to hospitals, and that is what's administered to people that have severe envenomations from our front fang venomous snake species.
How many venomous snake species are there in Australia?
Yeah, so there's 104 elapid species. So we've also got a handful of colubrid species, but in terms of our elapids, we have 104 approximately species in total. But again, only about 10-15% of those are considered dangerous to humans, people. So yes, we have a lot of snakes, but the majority of them are not dangerous to us.
You just used the words elapids and colubrids. Can you go through what they are?
Yeah, so basically when we're referring to our elapid species, you're talking about a group of snakes that have fixed front fangs, right? Now, death adders do have some mobility in their fangs, and you kind of realise that when you're milking them. They can move their fangs to a degree, but really we're talking about fixed fangs at the front. Now, a lot of colubrid species are what we refer to as rear-fanged snakes. So it's just different families of snake species and how they're broken up. So we also have pythons. Now, pythons are our non-venomous species. Now, a lot of people know pythons, like a diamond python or a carpet python. So it's just the different families and their relationships and how they're broken up.
What's the smallest snake species in Australia venomous?
Smallest venomous snake species, we have some really, really small, what we call like shovel-nosed snakes. They're tiny, and whilst they are elapids, they're not dangerous to us at all. They're actually pretty cute. Now, one of the smallest, we've got some pretty small snake species, to be honest, and yeah, they would probably be up there. Some of the shovel-nosed, they're pretty tiny.
And what about the biggest?
Our largest venomous snake, you've got your king brown and your coastal taipan. They're probably the largest. They grow extremely large at times. I've seen some big king browns. I've seen some big coastal taipans. King browns are quite a heavy-bodied snake, so they can either be extremely large. And the thing with taipans, coastal taipans and king browns too, they are quite large, but they're also highly venomous as well and do have pretty large venom glands and venom yield. So they're certainly not the kind of snake you would want to mess with too much. Always make sure you keep your distance around those species, that's for sure.
All right, Dan, we'll do one last question. Yep. Tell us a bit about what you've seen in the wild in terms of venomous snakes.
Yeah, I've seen heaps. To be honest, I've seen a few. I've been very lucky. I love getting out there and seeing our venomous snake species. Obviously, things like tiger snakes. One of my favourite snakes still to see would be red belly black snake. They're definitely one of my favourite, always been one of my favourite snakes since I was a little kid. Everything though, I've seen, coastal taipans, I've seen king brown snakes, eastern brown snakes, kind of seen a lot. So done a bit of travel around Australia, which is good. And usually when I'm travelling around Australia, I'm looking for these beautiful, beautiful animals. Cool. All right, guys, that's all. We're done. We're over. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a look into a couple of our amazing venomous snakes, Australian venomous snake species that call the Reptile Park home. Keep tuning in for the rest of the week. As I said, Thursday, big one, frogs with Liz. Make sure you tune in for that. but there's plenty of other videos as well. Obviously, we're closed at the moment. Can't wait to be open again and can't wait to see all you guys. We miss you here at the park. A little shout out though to Alexander Noble. I know you like watching. You sent me a beautiful little letter the other day and some great drawings of Elvis. I just wanted to say thank you very much, mate. You made my day, and I'll get back to your letter very soon. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Can't wait to see you again. See you later. Hooroo.